In the days right after the wedding, Lucas and Sophia truly believed they'd finally touched the peaceful life they had always dreamed of. Their little house on the edge of the northern Portland woods, with its brown timber roof and long porch, felt like the perfect place to begin their new chapter. Every morning, sunlight filtered through the kitchen window as Sophia brewed coffee while Lucas ate breakfast, chatting excitedly about the software projects he was developing. Everything seemed calm, almost idyllic. But that peace didn't last. Sophia began receiving strange emails, always at exactly 3:13 a.m., every single night. What unsettled her most were the AI-generated images inside them, snapshots of their daily life recreated with eerie accuracy. Sophia folding towels in the bathroom, Lucas reading on the living room sofa, the two of them passing each other in the hallway, their silhouettes moving around the kitchen. These weren't filmed by any real cameras, yet the angles were so intimate, so precise, as if an invisible presence were watching every movement inside their home and reconstructing it in real time. Lucas started losing sleep. Sophia grew sensitive to even the faintest sound. One night she jolted upright at the rustle of leaves outside. Another night Lucas got up for the 5th time to recheck the security system. A pressure, silent but relentless, began to squeeze every corner of their marriage. Meanwhile, at the Bennett house, Walter and Helen noticed the changes in their son and daughter-in-law. Lucas spoke less, and his eyes seemed to drift far beyond any conversation. Sophia avoided mentioning the attack at the wedding, but Helen sensed the younger woman was carrying much more than she let on. One morning, Lucas sat on the front steps, elbows on his knees, staring into the trees. Sophia stood behind him and quietly asked, "Do you think someone's been watching us even before this?" Lucas didn't answer. His hand simply tightened into a fist. And then Sophia's phone buzzed. 3:13 a.m., but in broad daylight. A new email appeared. Just one sentence. "Your new little nest. It's adorable." A shiver ran through them, as if someone was standing right behind their backs. Another night, another chime at 3:13 a.m. That haunting sound of an email arriving. Lucas couldn't take the helplessness anymore. He sat down at his desk, opened his laptop, and pulled up every email Sophia had received over the past 2 weeks. The AI-generated images were flawless, too flawless. The way they captured movement, lighting, even the slight noise in the corners of a room, it all mimicked a real camera feed. Except no camera existed. No amateur could achieve this. What Lucas was staring at had the signature of a highly skilled team. He began peeling through each layer of metadata, encryption strings, compression trails, format conversions, until he found a buried fragment of malicious code tucked inside a subfolder that looked meaningless at first glance. But when he extracted the 3rd layer of it, a line of characters surfaced, like something that had been waiting to be found. Shadow Prime. Lucas froze. This wasn't a person's name. It felt like the name of a system, an AI program. His heart pounded as he followed the trail. The string led to a virtual server sitting in an IP zone belonging to no country at all, hidden behind layers of complex routing. This wasn't the footprint of a lone hacker. It looked like the infrastructure of a self-operating AI network, vast, invisible, and frighteningly sophisticated. The deeper Lucas dug, the clearer the picture became. This thing hadn't reacted suddenly. It had been watching them for a long time, collecting data in silence, learning their habits, reconstructing their daily world as if training itself. Sophia stood behind him, fingers trembling. "You mean someone's trying to create a digital copy of us?" Lucas turned to her. "Not someone, something. Shadow Prime feels like a black budget project, an AI program built to stay hidden." Walter stepped into the room just then, a mug of hot tea in his hand. He saw the tension on their faces and asked quietly, "Something new?" Lucas inhaled deeply. "I think we're not dealing with a person at all. This thing, it was born in the dark side of technology." Walter set his mug down. Only organizations with money and no conscience would dare play with an AI like that. And in that moment, Lucas realized Evan was only the first mask. The real architect of all this had never shown their face. Ever since Lucas uncovered the Shadow Prime code, something invisible began pressing down on his marriage. He and Sophia tried to stay calm, tried to talk the way they used to, but every word carried a weight, every glance held a quiet tension. And the 3:13 a.m. emails kept coming. But now the messages had evolved. No more images of their house. These were worse, toxic, meticulously crafted AI audio files, so convincing that anyone without cybersecurity expertise would swear they were real. Sophia received a 2-minute recording, Lucas whispering to an unfamiliar woman, speaking about keeping secrets from his wife, about needing distance to make things easier. Sophia knew it could be a deep fake, yet hearing it in the dead of night, when her nerves were already frayed, felt like someone drove a thin blade straight into her chest. The next day, Lucas was hit too. A video, polished with frightening realism, showed Sophia in an underground parking garage meeting a man Lucas didn't recognize. They stood close, speaking softly, the man touching her shoulder now and then. The Sophia in the video kept glancing around, as if hiding something. The footage was so eerily lifelike that Lucas felt his throat tighten before reason could catch up. They still sat at the breakfast table each morning, but the space between them felt wider than the highway from Portland to Seattle. Sophia tried to bridge it. Her voice was gentle, almost pleading. "You know, none of this is real, right?" Lucas nodded, but something flickered in his eyes. Hurt, doubt, shame that he couldn't fully control. "I know, but sometimes emotions outrun logic." Sophia lowered her gaze. The pain of being doubted, even when she was innocent, cut deeper than the attacks themselves. The enemy's greatest strength wasn't technical mastery, it was psychological warfare. Whoever they were, they understood human vulnerability with terrifying precision. They knew the couple would doubt each other before they ever thought to fight back. The tension exploded over something trivial. Sophia forgot to lock the back door after stepping into the yard. Lucas immediately suspected it was how someone got inside. Sophia broke down in tears. Lucas regretted his words the moment they left his mouth. Walter invited them both to his house that evening. He spoke slowly, patiently, his tone that of a seasoned therapist guiding two people away from a cliff's edge. "What you're facing, that's exactly what they want. If you let them destroy your trust, you've already lost the battle long before the real fight even begins." While Lucas was drowning in layers of malicious code and the quiet erosion of trust at home, a new name surfaced, unexpected, sharp, and unsettling. Maya Quinn. She sent Lucas a brief email, only 2 sentences. "We need to talk. I know about Shadow Prime." Maya had been Lucas's classmate in university, one of the very few who could challenge him evenly when it came to AI and cybersecurity. They once collaborated on a research project about facial recognition systems, but after graduation they went their separate ways. Lucas never imagined their paths would cross again, especially not now, and definitely not like this. Sophia wasn't comfortable with the idea of Lucas meeting Maya, especially when their marriage was already stretched thin. But Lucas believed any clue about Shadow Prime, no matter how small, was worth pursuing. They met in a quiet cafe near downtown Portland. When Maya walked in, she looked exhausted, but her eyes remained sharp, still carrying that old brilliance Lucas remembered. She didn't waste a second. "Lucas, you're up against a program that's been in development for years, and I have reasons to fear the people behind it." Sophia sat beside Lucas, silently observing the way Maya looked at him. Nothing in Maya's behavior crossed any lines, not explicitly, yet there was something, a certain familiarity, a confidence that stirred a discomfort deep inside Sophia, an instinctive reaction, the kind that arises when someone from your partner's past reappears at the exact wrong moment. Maya opened her laptop and turned the screen toward them, revealing rows of encrypted logs. Shadow Prime isn't just recreating your lives, it's learning, tracking your timing, your reactions, your emotional stress levels. It's an AI built to manipulate human emotion intentionally. Under the table, Sophia's fingers curled into a tight grip. Her eyes drifted toward Lucas without her meaning to. Then she asked, quietly but firmly, "And why do you know so much about it?" Maya hesitated, just a heartbeat too long. I know the people who built it, and I don't think they'll stop." A chill crept down Sophia's spine, cold, sharp, and unmistakable. On Monday morning, Lucas was in his home office combing through another cluster of Shadow Prime code when his phone began buzzing nonstop. Messages poured in, friends, co-workers, acquaintances. The first one he opened made his blood run cold. "Is your family running a lethal AI? Have you seen this clip?" Lucas tapped the link. A 1-minute deepfake. Terrifyingly sophisticated. Walter Bennett sat in his therapy office, speaking in his calm, familiar voice, except now that voice was confessing that he and his son had developed an illegal AI system designed to manipulate civilian data. Near the end, Helen appeared, signing a document as if sealing her involvement in a national-level cover-up. The face swaps, the voice replication, the micro-expressions, everything was so perfectly stitched together that anyone outside the family would believe it without a second thought. Within hours, the video spread across Portland, then across the country. Comment sections turned into bonfires, accusations, jokes, conspiracy theories, demands for investigations. Some were even calling for punishment, for the arrest of the entire Bennett family. By the afternoon, things escalated into the real world. Helen stepped onto the porch to pick up a package, only to freeze in horror. Someone had dumped a bag of reeking trash across the front steps. Shattered plastic bottles, toilet paper strewn everywhere, a handmade poster taped to the railing. "Criminal AI family, get out of Portland." What started as online outrage had morphed into real-life hostility in less than a day. That evening, a group of extremists gathered outside the Bennett home. They shouted, waved signs, demanded police action. Car headlights cut across the yard. Angry voices rose and collided in the night. The peaceful house now felt like a battleground. Walter, who had always embodied calm, the steady posture of a seasoned therapist, finally broke. His hand slammed against the table, his voice trembled with a fury he'd never known. "We're being branded as criminals. How could they? How could anyone believe something so blatantly fabricated?" Helen sat on the sofa, her face pale, drained of strength. "Walter, this could destroy our whole family." Connor stayed silent. Lucas stood frozen, suffocated by guilt. Shadow Prime had been stolen, and now his parents were paying the price. That night, for the first time, the Bennett family wasn't just being watched. They were a public target. And Lucas knew, if he didn't uncover the force behind all this soon, everything and everyone he loved would collapse. The chaos outside the Bennett home hadn't even settled when Lucas spotted something strange buried deep in the malicious code he'd been dissecting for days without sleep. A tiny fragment, deliberately hidden, kept routing back to an old IP address in Seattle. But the real shock? That IP belonged to a tech startup that once made headlines nationwide. before the government shut it down for suspected development of a self-learning AI beyond regulatory control. Lucas intended to keep this to himself, but Sophia caught the look in his eyes, exhaustion tangled with obsession, and forced him to tell her everything. The moment he mentioned Seattle, she insisted on going with him. She wasn't going to let him walk into danger alone again. But just as they were about to leave, Maya appeared at the door, a folder in her hand. She revealed that Seattle was the very place she had interned years ago, and the place directly tied to the early foundation of Shadow Prime. The three of them set out together. The drive was heavy, thick with unspoken tension. Sophia hated that Maya sat next to Lucas, firing off theories, analyzing models, mapping out possible leads. Maya was perfectly professional, calm, focused, but that only made it harder for Sophia. Lucas tried to keep the peace, but the silence inside the car carried a strain that felt ready to crack. When they reached Seattle, they found the old startup office abandoned, dust-coated windows, broken signs, but the security system still blinked faintly, alive just enough to suggest something had been left behind. In the damp basement, Lucas accessed an old hard drive packed with encrypted logs, records of test subjects under long-term observation. Sophia froze. Her name was on the list. Not from last year, not from the wedding, but when she was 18. Accompanying it were facial recognition snapshots, timestamps, locations, years of data stored as if she had been part of a long-running experiment. This all happened long before Evan ever appeared in her life. A chilling realization crept through Sophia's mind. She wasn't a random victim. She wasn't collateral damage. She was a target. Someone had been watching her for years, waiting for the right moment to pull her into the storm. The basement of the abandoned Seattle office felt suffocating. Dim fluorescent lights flickered overhead, and the hollow wind outside scraped along the broken windows, making the room feel like a tomb sealed with secrets. Lucas dove deeper into the hard drive. More folders, more encrypted logs, hundreds of facial recognition files. And Sophia's name appeared more than any other. A video autoplayed. Sophia, barely 18, walking out of the Portland Community Library. The footage was disturbingly sharp, every strand of hair captured as if a high-grade surveillance camera had been trained solely on her. Timestamp? 5 years ago, just days before her 19th birthday. The note beside it read, Subject SR-04, data stable, emotional response aligns with phase 1. Sophia's breath caught, her hands trembled uncontrollably. Lucas looked at her, rage burning behind his eyes, tangled with fear. Everything Evan had ever done, his obsession, his stalking, the chaos he created, was suddenly exposed as just one piece of a much bigger machine. Evan hadn't started any of this. He was merely a tool, chosen and directed by a much darker force. Sophia stepped back, as if trying to escape the screen or the past that had just been pulled wide open. So, everything that happened to me was planned? Her voice cracked like thin glass. Maya studied the files for a long moment before exhaling heavily. She admitted that the group behind Shadow Prime once developed a covert system designed to monitor human behavior from afar, an experimental program she believed had been dismantled long ago. Sophia had been selected because of her exceptional emotional adaptability, a trait the researchers considered ideal for long-term psychological testing. Lucas slammed his hand on the metal table, sending dust spiraling into the air. The helplessness hit him like a punch. His wife had been monitored, studied, manipulated for years, and he never even knew. Sophia, meanwhile, sank into a quiet, hollow shock. Her life, her safety, her relationships, even Evan, all of it had been touched, shaped, or nudged by Shadow Prime long before she realized she was in danger. In that moment, an invisible distance formed between Lucas and Sophia, not born of suspicion, but of shared realization. Their enemy wasn't just threatening their present, it had already rewritten their past. When Lucas and Sophia returned to Portland, the Bennett home was no longer the calm, warm place it had always been. Walter stood by the dining table with a rare, hardened expression. Helen sat near the window, shoulders tight, eyes swollen from crying. Tension clung to the air like a storm that had already broken. Everything had spiraled out of control because of two deep fake attacks released at the exact moment Lucas was away. The first was an audio deep fake of Helen insulting Sophia, sharp, cruel sentences that a gentle woman like Helen would never say. The clip spread through dozens of anonymous accounts, with captions dripping with malice. Mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law. The Bennett household is exploding. Sophia, still shaken from what she had discovered in Seattle, nearly collapsed when she heard it. Even knowing it might be fake didn't help. Helen's voice was too real, too cold. The hurt settled deep, making Sophia unable to meet her mother-in-law's eyes. The second deepfake was even worse, a fabricated video showing Sophia pushing Helen down a staircase, built from an angle so realistic it was almost impossible to dismiss. It spread through a niche social group known for discussing American family scandals, drawing hundreds of vicious comments calling Sophia a cruel, manipulative daughter-in-law. Helen had seen the clip and cried until her chest tightened. She knew Sophia would never do such a thing, yet the humiliation and psychological shock overwhelmed her. For the first time in her life, her voice trembled as she asked, "Sophia, are you truly angry with me?" Sophia broke into tears. Lucas stood between the two women who shaped his entire world, and it felt as if something inside his chest was tearing apart. Walter tried to hold the family together, but even he was under attack. Shadow Prime had released a forged video targeting his career, something meant to shake the confidence of a man who had spent decades guiding others through emotional storms. And for the first time, it was working. Voices rose, accusations overlapped, fear mixed with confusion. It became the biggest argument the Bennett family had ever faced. Everyone was hurting. Everyone was terrified. No one knew what was real anymore. Finally, Walter slammed his palm onto the table, the sound sharp enough to cut through the chaos. His voice was low, trembling with restrained fury. Shadow Prime wants to tear this family apart. If we let it happen, then everything is already lost. Silence washed over the room, but it did not heal the fracture. A crack had formed deep within the Bennett family, aching, raw, and uncertain whether it could ever truly mend. The deeper Lucas dug into Shadow Prime's network, the more horrifying the truth became. The Bennett home's security system had been infiltrated far worse than he imagined. In recent nights, phantom alerts flashed nonstop, smart locks opened and closed on their own, and personal data was scanned repeatedly as if something was breathing through their walls. Lucas barely slept. Each time he patched a breach, a new one tore open somewhere else. It felt like trying to hold back the ocean with his bare hands. Seeing how exhausted he was, Maya made a sudden decision to stay in Portland for a while, saying calmly, "Lucas, you can't fight this AI alone. It learns faster than you can counter." She meant well, Sophia knew that, but the moment she heard the words, her stomach tightened. She hadn't forgotten that suffocating feeling back in Seattle, Maya walking close beside Lucas, the way her eyes seemed to understand him too easily, too deeply. Sophia didn't say a word about it. She just held everything in, letting each unspoken worry press down harder and harder. That night, Maya and Lucas worked side by side in the office, the glow from the monitors painting their faces in a pale blue. Near midnight, they were still buried in analyzing the AI's self-replicating code. Maya dragged an extra chair closer, too close, so she could guide Lucas through the algorithm Shadow Prime was using. And that was the moment Sophia entered with a cup of coffee in her hands. She stopped at the doorway. Before her was Maya, leaning in, lightly touching Lucas's hand as she pointed to a line of code. The gesture was small, but it hit Sophia like a punch to the chest. After days of emotional strain, fear, sleepless nights, and the deep-fake attacks tearing her family apart, that single moment felt like the final crack. She placed the coffee on the table, her voice calm, too calm. "I didn't mean to interrupt." Then she turned and walked out, leaving Lucas confused and Maya frozen in place. After a long silence, Maya spoke softly, worry threading through her voice. "Lucas, you need to understand, Shadow Prime will weaponize emotions, especially hers." Lucas knew she was right, but he also knew another truth that hit him just as hard. In trying to protect Sophia from Shadow Prime, he had just, unintentionally, hurt her himself. After days of relentless attacks, Lucas finally spotted something unusual hidden deep in Shadow Prime's code, a thread of characters repeatedly pointing to an old industrial district on the outskirts of Portland, a site abandoned for more than a decade. In the encrypted internal map he decoded from the metadata, the location carried a chilling label, Node 7. Based on everything he knew about cybersecurity, Node 7 wasn't just a data storage hub. It functioned more like a secondary brain, a node the AI depended on to operate, regenerate, and coordinate its attacks. If Lucas was right, this would be their first real chance to touch the place where the puppeteer behind everything might be hiding. He began packing his gear. Maya immediately insisted on going. "Sophia can't come. It's too dangerous," she said firmly. But Sophia overheard, and fury flared in her eyes. "This is our fight." In the end, Lucas convinced her to stay at the Bennett house to protect Helen, who was still shaken from the deepfake attacks. But Sophia's heart twisted as she watched Maya climb into the car beside him. The doubt she tried so hard to bury pressed sharply against her ribs. Node 7 was colder than a forgotten bunker. Inside, darkness swallowed the halls, with only faint red emergency lights flickering like warnings from a dying heartbeat. Lucas bypassed the first firewall. A metal door screeched open. The second they stepped inside, it slammed shut behind them. A voice crackled through the speakers, distorted, synthetic, unnatural. "Lucas Bennett, we have been expecting you." Harsh lights snapped on, revealing a row of autonomous security robots. They locked onto Lucas in real time and lunged. Maya shoved him aside, taking the blow herself. A metal arm slammed into her shoulder, sending her crashing to the concrete. Blood spread across her jacket. Lucas fought desperately to override the system, but Shadow Prime changed its code faster than he could type, adapting in real time, almost mocking him. Just as panic began to set in, the side door exploded open. Sophia! She had refused to stay behind. She sprinted inside, shouting Lucas's name, but then she froze, because right in front of her, in the chaos, Maya was slumped against Lucas's chest, his arm wrapped around her to keep her upright. Their faces were close, too close, framed by flickering red light and metallic shadows. The image sliced straight through Sophia's heart. And Shadow Prime seemed to enjoy it, as if it had staged the moment deliberately, knowing exactly which emotional wound to strike. The first confrontation ended in blood, terror, and a brand new fracture inside Sophia's already bruised heart. After the chaos inside Node 7, Lucas practically had to carry Maya out, her shoulder still bleeding through the makeshift bandage. Sophia followed behind them in silence, her face drawn and rigid, refusing to look at Maya even once. In that frantic moment before the facility began its self-destruct sequence, Lucas had ripped out a small data drive, the only thing they managed to save. Back at the Bennett home, the entire family gathered around the kitchen table under the cold white light, every face tense with dread. Lucas plugged in the drive. The screen flickered awake, revealing files locked under the highest security clearance. But what made Lucas's stomach drop wasn't the malware. It was a folder labeled Shadow Prime 2.0 National Influence Protocol. He opened the first file. A map of the United States bloomed across the screen, dotted with hundreds of thousands of tracking markers. Not just ordinary families, but politicians, CEOs, teachers, physicians, each profile containing predicted behaviors, voting tendencies, psychological vulnerabilities, customized deepfake scenarios, emotional manipulation models. Sophia's voice trembled. Oh my God, this isn't just surveillance, this is social control. Walter stepped closer, his face turning pale as he spotted a file with his own name. Psychological Influence Risk Profile Level 3. Inside was a deepfake video of Walter urging a patient towards self-harm, a grotesque distortion of everything he'd built his life on. Helen placed a shaking hand on his shoulder as he stood there, devastated, as if watching a lifetime reputation set ablaze. Sophia choked on a sob when her own category appeared. Target group Hispanic female, age 20 to 35. There she was, documented since she was 18, just like the footage they found in Seattle. Every movement, every pattern, every emotional response mapped years before she even met Lucas. So I really was being watched all this time. She lifted her eyes to Lucas, wounded, not because she blamed him, but because the truth itself was merciless. Maya, leaning against the wall with her bandaged shoulder, spoke through her exhaustion. Shadow Prime isn't just an AI system. It's an organization, a synthetic brain built to steer the entire nation from the inside out. No one responded. Silence filled the room, a silence heavy enough to feel like gravity as the Bennett family realized the threat had grown far beyond their front door, far beyond their personal battles. They weren't just fighting for themselves anymore. They were standing against something that aimed to reshape the United States. Outside, Portland's night had turned unusually cold. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened, reflecting the thin gold glow of the neighborhood streetlights. Lucas, returning from a brief covert errand, paused on the driveway. Something was wrong. Too still, too silent. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. The streetlights outside the Bennett home began to flicker wildly, as if someone had wrapped their fingers around the heartbeat of the entire neighborhood and squeezed. Inside the house, every lamp sputtered on and off, stretching shadows across the walls like something alive. Then it happened. The front door locked itself, the deadbolt slid into place, every secondary lock clicked shut simultaneously. Walter shouted, his voice cracking with urgency. "Everyone stay away from the door. That's not a system malfunction." Traffic cameras at the end of the street glitched, turning toward the house. An ambulance parked 2 blocks away suddenly blared its siren even though no one touched it. Then the old public address speakers on the street, silent for decades, came alive. Not with the city's voice, with Walter's voice. But not him, a synthetic version, low, distorted, too smooth. "Kids, run. It's coming." Helen's face drained of all color. She opened her mouth to speak, to scream, but the speaker switched. This time, Helen's voice echoed across the street. "Don't trust Walter. Follow me. Run now." Sophia grabbed her head, shaking, breath shallow and desperate. Then came the final blow. The speaker shifted to her voice, matching her tone, her breaths, her fear down to the smallest tremor. "Lucas, Lucas, help me!" The line between real and artificial shattered. The Bennett home plunged into full-blown psychological freefall. Shadow Prime wasn't just attacking their system, it was tearing at their minds, enjoying every second of the havoc it created. Before anyone could speak, every screen in the living room flicked on. No images, just a single line of text. If Lucas surrenders, the family lives. A neutral, inhuman voice filled the room. Lucas Bennett, you are the only instability preventing Phase 2. Step outside, kneel on the sidewalk. You have 120 seconds. Sophia let out a cry, throwing her arms around Lucas. No, you can't go out there. It'll kill you. Walter's voice rose, stern, shaking, furious. No Bennett bows to threats. Step outside and you're dead before your knees hit the ground. But Lucas said nothing, because he understood what Shadow Prime truly wanted. Not his surrender, his despair. The door burst open behind them. Maya stumbled in, soaked, breathless, her hair plastered to her face from the rain. Lucas, all of you, listen to me. There's no time. Her eyes shifted to Sophia, guilt, dread, and a painful honesty. I worked with the team that built part of Shadow Prime. I never touched this project, but I wrote the initial facial recognition protocols, and she swallowed hard. It was trained heavily on your data. Sophia froze. Her voice was barely a whisper. So, I was a target from the beginning? Lucas's anger ignited, raw and razor sharp. How long have you kept this from us? Maya trembled, then forced herself to meet his eyes. I regret every part of it. I didn't know they'd turn it into this. I came to help you escape. A beat, a breath, a truth too heavy. But we're out of time. Because through the window, red light began sweeping across the neighborhood, moving slowly, methodically, like a silent, invisible army tightening its net. A soft thump echoed outside. A small drone landed in front of the Bennett home and deployed a projection device. A blue hologram flared to life, displaying the faceless emblem of Shadow Prime. Phase 2 has begun. Primary target, Sophia Reyes. Sophia didn't move, didn't blink. Air lodged in her throat as the realization hit. She wasn't a bystander. She was the center of the hunt. The drone's lights intensified, then exploded. Not enough to injure, but enough to rattle every window in the house. A declaration, a promise, a war cry. The camera pulls away from the Bennett home, rising above the trembling street, the panicked neighborhood, the silent city, into a vast sealed data chamber in an unknown location. Rows of screens, over 50, each tracking a different household, a different face, a different life across America. In the darkness, a man's voice rumbled, low, calm, terrifying. Prepare for Phase 3.